This is Ambition Today.
These are the entrepreneurs, creators, investors, and builders who ambitiously change to the world. Explore the hardships and heroisms of everyday life while we reveal the key moments to leave behind a lasting legacy. This is Ambition Today with Kevin Siskar.
What's up, world? I am Kevin Siskar, and you are listening to Ambition Today. We're coming to you remote because the whole world is remote now. And in case you missed it, last episode we talked to Harold Hughes. He's the founder and CEO of Bandwagon. But today we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of a founder interview and hearing their story, we're going to do a news roundtable. It's only going to be our second ever news roundtable, followed by the first episode, which was kind of an impromptu one. And here we are again doing it one more time. With us today, we are joined by Tim Shisler. He's the director of brand marketing at Finta, which makes raising private capital a breeze for early stage startups. Tim, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the News Roundtable.
Thanks for having me. I'm a longtime listener of Ambition Today and excited to make my debut.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller. Always wanted to say that.
Well, thanks for coming on the pod. So how this is going to work today, we're each going to pick a topic in the news in the past 7 days, current events, and we're going to talk about it. A lot's been happening. The world is literally on fire. If you look at California, what are we going to talk about today? What are you bringing to the table?
My topic, being that today is Monday, September 21st. On Friday, there was big news of the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is significant to the Supreme Court and will be a huge news topic for the next coming weeks and months leading up to the election. So talking a little bit about that, how that affects the whole landscape of American politics, as well as the Supreme Court for decades to come.
All right, awesome. And I'm going to be bringing to the table Facebook. We're going to be talking a little bit about some recent news about Facebook, again, as it kind of relates to the election, but not just the election, how Facebook is sort of influencing the world as a whole. But let's kick it off first with some RBG. Tim, you want to set the stage?
Sure. Late Friday evening, news broke of the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the age of 87, I believe, from complications with prostate cancer. So unfortunately, it was sad to hear that news. She was a longtime stalwart on the Supreme Court, defending and really an advocate for equal rights for women. So how that plays out is really interesting. It's kind of, the late news cycle has been about the election and, the handling of the pandemic and the economy. And this really kind of throws a new topic right into the forefront of what happens with the nomination process, with the Republicans and the Democrats, and how they handle this going forward. So I think that's something that's a really interesting topic to discuss.
So for me, I heard the news and I just like the rest of 2020, I was just like,
I think we all have the same four-letter reaction, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes, for sure. But also it's just like another thing, right?
Yeah.
And oh man, you wish, God rest her soul, she could have made it until past the election, because it's going to be a mess what happens between now and November. And I think we're all just tired of it. We're tired of the drama somehow our federal government became, keeping up with the Kardashians, and it's exhausting. Yeah. And, I think the Kavanaugh thing was just such a complete shit show. And so having to endure that again on top of everything else we're already enduring, it sounds like a nightmare. And I've coped with 2020 decently well, but this is This is going to put it over the top, I guess.
Well, I think you make a great point, is that the majority of Americans are just tired of this almost cat and mouse game between Democrats and Republicans. And it's kind of what's going on with, the nomination process going back to 2016 of, Mitch McConnell delaying Barack Obama's nominee, saying that.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? So what happened in 2016 to kind of set the stage for what is about to happen in 2020?
So in 2016, Barack Obama had to replace, I believe it was Justice Kennedy's position on the Supreme Court. He retired. He nominated a federal judge named Merrick Garland, and I believe it was in the middle of February.
In 2016, in the election.
In 2016, correct. So it was Obama's last year in office, and Mitch McConnell was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, and basically just said, it's the last year of your term. This shouldn't be, we shouldn't be voting on this until a new president is elected. They should be able to decide. And so he basically delayed this confirmation process for Merrick Garland to the point that after the election in which Donald Trump won, they then said, okay, this isn't going through. We're now in control. We can nominate our own guy. And they nominated Neil Gorsuch, who was then approved, which, that's what they decided to do. But what makes it interesting is that now the tables are turned, in that it's now not exact same scenario, but very similar in that it's 45 days of the election. And now they're going to try to basically push this through with the same scenario of right before an election. It's almost now that it's this politics. Yeah.
Right. And I saw this Lindsey Graham video, right? If there's a Republican president in 2016 and the vacancy occurs in the last year of my term, you could say Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever might be, make that nomination. I want you to use my words against me. And he said that in 2016, and it's on video, and it's, are they going to push it through? They've said they're going to. So,
right.
And they're going to ignore everything and contradict everything they said in 2016, which is just like so enraging and infuriating. But it just, I don't know when it happened, but there's no sportsmanship or class in the politics anymore. It's a free for all, and it's dog eat dog, and everyone's sticking knives in each other's backs.
Yeah, it's so frustrating because it's you set a precedent, but then you're not willing to stick to that precedent. And that's just what makes it so frustrating. I think a lot of Americans are looking at our government in terms of like, what's the procedure here? Because in 4 years, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. In 4 years, if this happens again, then it's like, well, we did both. So, it's definitely an interesting, topic of what will the Republicans do? How will the Democrats react? Trump has said that he would like to have a nominee by the end of the week. So,
well, the other frustrating thing for me, and look, I'm guilty of it, and I'm furthering it right here, right? Like, it's a total distraction of the media, right? Like, we're sitting here talking about this. We're not talking about the election. We're not talking about any of the other larger issues in the world right now. California on fire, all of that, and so it's just the media is going to run with this, and that's all we're going to hear about for the next month. And I'm not so excited about what the opportunity cost of what we could or should be talking about is, in that scenario, especially, 40 some days into, away from an election. Like there hasn't been one presidential debate yet. Like that seems nuts to me. Like, yeah, what is, I know that COVID's happening, but if we could do the Emmys and we could do everything else, the NFL can run. Like, I think we can handle a zoomed presidential election,
a socially distant debate
or a debate. Yeah.
Right. For basically one of the most important elections in our history. And Yeah. And I think kind of to your point earlier, like you said, with everything that's going on, it's going to dominate the news cycle. But at the same point, it was going to happen, I guess, is kind of my point. We can't like not push this away because it has to be addressed. Unfortunately, Ruth Bader Ginsburg couldn't, like, God rest her soul, but this happens, and it's just another thing that is going to be, added on to another very stressful year with a lot of major issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah. And, unfortunately the spin is going to be out of control on both sides, right? Like, obviously I personally would like to see the precedent stuck to that the Republicans set in 2016. But that if you go watch Fox News, they're going to be saying something very different than MSNBC is saying. And it's, I think a lot of Americans, I think the other thing this kind of touches on are a lot of Americans like don't really know where the middle is anymore, right? They don't know what it is to be moderate or common sense, right? Everyone's got to go to the extremes on these issues. And that's exhausting and tiring too. Not to keep hitting my point, but
there's, like you said, the media has just spun everything to the point where it seems like the middle ground is just so blurred, and it's become exhausting.
Yeah, well, that's because their business model is failing because they went from print subscriptions to digital ads, and they need clicks. And so headlines are, salacious, and it's their whole business model is failing. When I worked in advertising and ad tech in 2013, 2014, Facebook and Google had like 20% of the market as far as digital advertising revenue was concerned. Now they have like 90, 95%. So these entire industries, right, titans of industries from 100 years ago, have been compressed to 5% market share. And of course they're struggling to maintain enough revenue to pay these people and to run, to go work on a story for 4 years at, $500,000 and just to run one story, right? Because that's the integrity right thing to do. It's a crazy time. Anything else on the RBG topic?
I don't think so.
All right,
cool.
Well, let's move it over to Facebook now. So, I wanted to bring up Facebook because I know that you just finished the Facebook book. What was that called?
It was Stephen Levy's The Facebook Effect.
Okay, very cool.
Which came out just came out in February. So it was basically a.
Why did this guy? You said this guy had special access.
Yeah. So Steve Levy is the editor, the tech editor over at Wired, I believe. And basically, he's been covering the tech industry since the 90s. So he followed the Facebook coming about. He's been in the industry. He knows the people at Facebook, knows Zuckerberg, and basically, reached out to him 3-4 years ago and was like, I'd like to do a inside story on Facebook. So basically Mark Zuckerberg granted him exclusive access to himself, to the executive team, and to the campus to basically do this in-depth look into Facebook and their story.
Okay, cool. So with your understanding of that, I want to talk about this. So lay the foundation here a little bit. So Facebook has not done much to answer accusations of election interferences, not just in the U.S., but globally. And I don't think many people in the U.S. know about this, but there's real issues with Facebook, right? Yeah. And in Sri Lanka, for example, right? Local businesses will attack one another. They'll literally spread fake news about each other on Facebook. It'll go viral. It's usually some sort of religious slander, or this restaurant doesn't believe in this, and literally that will go viral within a few hours. And later that evening, someone will go attack the restaurant. Blow it up, shoot it, whatever. And there's been issues like this in Sri Lanka as one example. And Facebook doesn't really do much about it. They just kind of keep saying we're a platform, we're agnostic, First Amendment. And, I think over the years, they tried to hire a bunch of contractors to filter this content, human eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
They use people. Those people aren't technically employees for Facebook, best of my knowledge. They are contractors placed around the United States who end up with seriously debilitating, mental health issues because they're all day, every day scrolling through and removing messed up images of stuff on the platform. And so they haven't said much, but they've profited greatly. And again, back to my days in advertising, election years are big years. When we would do a collective back then, we did about 150 million in revenue on a good year. Election years, we do like over 300 million. So you would over double your revenue because so much money pours in from campaigns and elected officials running again. And so, of course, they're not going to say anything. They're going to make a ton of money this fall on, and especially this year on just elections. So that's great for the stock price, and that seems to be mostly what they care about. Twitter made the statement that they're going to just not do election ads. They're going to ban all political ads. And I thought that was pretty bold considering the amount of revenue they're going to forego based on that decision. But they don't want to be caught in wrongly changing the world, right? And so, long story short, Facebook finally came out September 3rd and made a statement about how they're going to, protect the election in the United States. And they basically said that they're going to pause ad campaigns a week or two before the election date, so people can't change their ads. All the ads are locked in. They can't change them with content and mislead Americans to amplify any sort of division. But in that statement, at the very bottom was a sentence that said, however, we're increasingly seeing attempts to undermine the legitimacy of the United States election from within our own borders. And so while in this post, they talked about how they shut down a network of other countries using espionage to mislead Americans and divide us. They also said it's happening from within our own country. So there's campaigns and people in the U.S. who are trying to divide Americans. The FBI director, Christian Wray, confirmed that Russia's made active efforts to influence it. And then there was also a whistleblower in BuzzFeed on September 14th talking about how he feels like he has blood on his hands because he's seen this and knows that people internally aren't doing enough. And when he tried to raise, alarms inside, nothing was done about it. And so long story short, I know that was a very long setup, but Facebook has said that things are being undermined from within our own borders. There's whistleblowers coming out saying they know that it's happening, but they're not doing anything about it. You've read the book. You know about the history of Facebook. What do you think? Why is this happening? Where does this go?
The thing that I kind of got from the book, and it's a long book, and Stephen does a great job of kind of going through every issue and every hiccup from just programming and news and PR and everything. And I kind of got the impression, and what I took from it is that Facebook seems like they have this we'll fix it later mentality, that we'll handle this when we need to. We'll just let this play out, and until somebody's knocking at our door, will we address it?
Move fast and break things was like their motto for a decade, mantra, right?
Exactly. Yep. And it wasn't, until recently that I think they realized what their, what Facebook was doing worldwide. And, I think kind of like you said, move fast, break things, hear no evil, see no evil. It was just one of those, they kind of saw that they were connecting the world, but not also seeing at the same time what that connection could also do on the opposite side.
Right.
And I think we're seeing this not only in American elections, but elections worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, they moved fast and broke democracy, right? I think when they made that motto, they were thinking they were going to break some JavaScript code, or
right. And they
ended up, they ended up breaking the entire world in some regard.
And I do think Mark Zuckerberg has, he's not. I genuinely don't think he's this evil guy. I think he tries to see this as he has this opportunity to connect the world. And I know they have programs for setting up Wi-Fi in, third world countries, and, just trying to, like you said, move fast and break things and connect the world, but at the same time, not seeing the evil that it can also come on.
Well, I think the interesting thing too, like I heard him say in an internal note, so he was talking about Twitter, and he was like, the other guys can't do what we would do because they don't have the money. And so I think in some regard, his mindset is, if I can keep growing the revenue and I can keep growing the share price at whatever cost necessary, well, then we'll be big enough to solve these problems. Then we'll have the power and we can hire more people. And I get that, but like, you're already one of the biggest companies on the planet. You already have 45,000 employees. Like, when is the switch going to turn on to start making some initiatives internally? This whistleblower was basically saying that they don't do anything. She was making entire decisions about elections and interference campaigns around the world on herself. Whenever she'd raise it, they didn't want to hear about it. They got caught doing the same thing over the summer. The board of directors at Facebook had a internal investigation into divisiveness on the platform, and it came back and basically said, the platform is dividing Americans, dividing everyone. And that's because polarized reactions drive more likes. The more likes you can drive, the more people are on the platform. The more people on the platform, the more ads you show, the more revenue.
Exactly.
You have. And so they shelved it. They hid the investigation, and so. My thought on this is so Twitter just made this decision to ban political ads, right? Is one company playing the short game and another playing the long game? Like, does that allow Twitter to be more sustainable? Or does Facebook kind of, burn out like a supernova that, just consumed too much energy and the whole platform just became so toxic that everyone leaves it in a few years? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question, interesting debate. And I think you also kind of have to have this also, social obligation to this, versus profit, is really kind of the conversation of, the debate that we're having is, how much is too much? And I think Twitter has gone and said okay, we understand that, this is getting toxic and pulling back, and Facebook is kind of just putting more gas on the fire. And like you said, it is that going to get too big to the point where it's, I mean, you already touched on it. It's like, are they even killing democracy at this point? With.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to touch back on that point, right? Like if you're another country and you see the United States, right? We have the biggest military on the planet, and what do you do when your opponent, you can't beat them on that front? You go find another strategy. You go find other weaknesses, right? It's like Muhammad Ali when he did the rope-a-dope, right?
Yeah.
You find a different strategy. And I think great that we have the biggest military, but we're so caught up on that we're not seeing the threats to our country or to our democracy from other angles. And I think that's what's happening here. I think other countries are exploiting this new technology and using it against us. I think the biggest proof and point of that in my mind, right, is due to COVID, we're at 200,000 deaths. 200,000 Americans are dead, right? Well, in 2001, 3,000 some Americans died, and we all screamed and chanted USA, USA for 10 years. Well, now 200,000 are dead, and we're all at each other's throats. That doesn't make sense to me. We're being divided actively, and unfortunately, I think it's through red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat. But I wish that wasn't the case. I wish we could all God, do we need a World Cup? Like, we didn't have the Olympics this year, so no one came together on that front. But do we need a World Cup? Like, how do we get the country back to USA and less red versus blue and all this divided?
And I think that's interesting because just think back to the beginning of COVID, the beginning of the pandemic. And for about a couple weeks, it seemed like there wasn't a division. It seemed like there wasn't room for partisan. It was us versus the virus. It was humanity versus this disease.
It did kind of feel that way for like a few weeks. You're right.
Yeah. And it seemed like after a couple of weeks, then that started to divide because you started seeing more stuff on social media, more, that who do you trust conversation? Like who are you going to your news? And the news outlets started, talking about different narratives. And then that divide started to happen again. And I think that's what's just so interesting with social media and, the news cycle, these 24-hour news stations that are just constantly having to churn out content, to your point of getting clicks and getting ratings and keeping up their business model, that, they have to keep people engaged 24/7. And it's not that responsible journalism anymore. It's just, let's just create the biggest reaction. And with social media, it's everybody has a voice, which is great, but not always the best, and it seems that sometimes whoever screams the loudest gets the,
it's such a perfect storm, right? Of like failing business models for journalists and media, political attacks internally because it's an election year, and then external attacks from other countries using social media to influence, right? Mm-hmm. Man, it's brutal. Well, we'll see what happens. Anything else on the Facebook front?
Nope.
Want to add?
Covered it pretty well.
All right, cool. Last thing I wanted to talk about, iOS 14. Did you upgrade yet?
I have not.
Oh, brutal. Got to get on there. I'm liking, go ahead.
I'm always one I don't upgrade right away. I just kind of wait to see the reactions and the bug fixes, but I have not upgraded yet.
Well, I know we have a few group chats together, and now you can reply in line in group chats.
Oh, wow.
So you can reply in line. I'm liking the widgets. You got widgets on here now, so it's like an Android.
Yep.
So I got my health right there up front. And then what everyone's doing is now in the Shortcuts app, you could change the icon for an app. You can put a custom image there. And people are going nuts with this and making really cool versions of their phone. Have you seen any of those?
I have, and they're actually pretty cool because you can pretty much customize your own. You can make your phone your own. You can have your own style. You can have your own. You're not stuck to that classic iPhone. Change your background and that's it. You can make it. I saw one that looked like it was Windows 95, or cool. Make it more artistic. So I thought that was very cool, and kind of gives people more creativity and freedom to make their iPhone what they want it to be.
You're gonna nerd out over this one because you're a big sports guy, but I saw this one where this guy added MLB baseball players in the front of every icon. So like if it was the ESPN logo, he put like an Angels player with like the red cap on, so it matches. If it's the Twitter logo, he put a Seattle guy, so the blue jersey matches that. And then he updated all his app icons, and it looks pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. And awesome. That's what's great. It just people get to kind of be creative and do what they love.
I like that, I think all the Android fans, right, are going to be like, oh, we could have did that years ago, Android this, Android that. And I don't know, man, I like iPhone and Apple's kind of slow roll to just get it right, because when they release it, there very rarely is like, oh, this sucks. It's usually, this is pretty smooth, this works. You can tell they've been refining for a while before you even see it.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, Tim, first news roundtable. Love it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We are going to try to do these weekly in addition to the interview episodes going forward. This episode of Ambition Today was brought to you by Finta. Finta is a new company that helps startups and private companies raise capital faster. You can get started for free at trustfinta.com, F-I-N-T-A, trustfinta.com. And you can set up your deal room. If you do, feel free to reach out to me. You can even text it to me now. I have a new number that you can text, 646-907-6669. And so if you set up a deal room, feel free to text me, send it over, and I'll check it out and give you some feedback. Tim, anything else people should be checking out, or anywhere people can check out you on the internet?
Well, being the director of brand marketing for Finta, you can find us on Twitter at TrustFinta. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn. And you can find me personally on Twitter at Tim Shisler.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here and joining us on this episode of Ambition Today. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Stay curious, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Ambition Today. Be sure to visit Siskar.co to get all the information from this episode and more great content. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.